All right, so we're back with the price tag of leadership, part 8, key areas that set a leader apart as a leader. And I'm just going to start off with a story here. And it actually goes with a man who says, I'm going to just kind of be a little bit responsible here. And it turns out to be from an Italian freestyle diver, or free diver is what they would call him. And interesting enough, he's, you know, out with his granddaughter. They're just having a great time. And next thing you know, he gets a peck on the shoulder and is kind of like, what's going on? And he's like, what, a dolphin? Like, I can't believe what's going on here. Ends up happening was that dolphin got his attention. I guess they're pretty intelligent. So what ends up happening is they go down into the water about 20 meters or so. And next thing you know, he sees that there is another dolphin caught in a fishing net. So he comes straight back up to the water. And I don't know what kind of supplies that he's had prepped for this type of journey. However, on the other hand, his granddaughter gives him a set of scissors that he requests, goes back down, frees the dolphin, and then notices after that dolphin was freed, a loud screech, almost like, I guess apparently you could say it was like a human cry. That dolphin ends up going to the surface, coming to find out that the dolphin that was actually in the net, caught, was a female dolphin who actually gave birth shortly after she surfaced. So the male dolphin then, I guess, pecked him kind of on the cheek, and then off they went into the abyss. Like, it was just kind of gone. Ironically enough, that was a story that I just happened to read earlier today. And to finish off the story, here's what Enzo Maiorca, the Italian freediver, said. Until man learns to respect and speak to the natural world, he can never truly understand his place on earth. A powerful wake-up call that nature speaks only when we are listening. So it's just kind of an understanding of saying, hey, when you're starting to feel like these internal intuitions or these nudges or whatever you want to call them, I don't know whatever you want to believe, but you can believe whatever you want. I believe in Jesus. However, listen to those promptings, whatever you might want to correlate them to. However, don't disregard them, because that could actually lead to catastrophic who knows what in the aftermath. Okay, so on to the next one. So here we go. Be responsible to those you lead. So if you look in this picture, it's intentionally having a younger, not a young man, but a younger, kind of like about my age, but only with a full head of hair. And he happens to be addressing a stadium. And the only reason why I say this is because it's just essentially, if you look, you can't really see it in a great detail, but if you look close enough and you can pause and you can zoom right in, it's actually a basketball situation where they just won the championship. And why is that? Because great leaders never set themselves above their followers except on carrying out responsibilities. He felt that his responsibility was to make sure that he could deliver the team to where they needed to do and be, and what they needed to do was to follow through, and where they needed to be was to complete the task and win the championship, and successfully they have. So in the sports world, these leaders show themselves very quickly when the game requires someone to step up and make the hard plays. So this is the last shot or the starting part of the momentum when needed most. So when you're looking at certain things in certain circumstances, in the first 5 minutes of the second half of a 2-half basketball game, you're going to be looking at the critical momentum builder. So essentially, in that small time frame, you're looking at maybe a 5, maybe a 15, and sometimes rarely a 20-plus point run. Okay, if you ever watch Division I or any like in basketball in the U.S. and the college and things of that nature, this is essentially the time when you're going to notice when teams literally come right out of the gate hard and strong, separate themselves, and they, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you see it, they will actually play a style of basketball that'll just kind of maintain the gap unless the other team all of a sudden switches it around and pulls on through. In my personal childhood, one if you want to call it years, when I played competitive sports, there's been times when we were down by 20 by the half and they thought you guys are nothing but, and then you can fill in the blank. And it turns out we went on a 60-point run and we ended up beating them by 40 points. It was an actual complete blowout. It was, I don't know, many teams that were able to do that, but those are the types of situations and circumstances when you have people that are willing to step up to the plate and just move a situation or circumstance from doom and gloom to optimistic and silver lining. The results can be quite tremendously positive. So never forget, when you're in a room and everyone thinks that they are the best in, say, in a marketing or a corporate environment, in label, product, and an organization, and ask oneself, then why are we in a rank to our competitors of less than number one? So here's the other thing. When you are in an environment and you're being asked all these questions saying, hey, do we have this and that? And everyone's like, yeah. And then it's like, well, where are the checks and balances where you're at? And then when the room goes silent, everybody freezes and says, I can't believe what's going on here. Next thing you know, what happens? They got to look at the person in the mirror. So understanding when you're setting yourself up and then you're putting yourself in a different catastrophic atmosphere because you're not setting yourself above those that you're responsible for and who you lead, but you only put yourself in that type of responsibility aspect and making sure that the things that have to get done are getting done. And then you're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the deadlines are met, the schedules followed through, and everything else is going as the way it should be. Why? Because at the end of the day, the reality is that there's only really one thing that we all live and die for, and that's just survival. And surviving and trying to be number one, surviving to make ends meet financially, surviving to do what? And the list goes on, and the lenses can be cleared, because it really only comes down to one thing. Some people do things only for one reason. That'd be only for, say, paying it forward, their family, a legacy. You could fill in the blank. You have to be willing to step up and say, I'm going to be accountable here. Why? Why would you want to be accountable? Not too many people are accountable. And why would I want to be in this situation? Well, I'll tell you right now, this is exactly what you want to be. Because many times what we see great people in areas of the public eye, sports, public figures, large organizations, and the list continues. But why? But why? But fall, why? Why do they just all of a sudden tend to fall? Well, it's very simple. It's very simple. Is it because they can or cannot handle the pressure? Are they getting all of their needs met, depending on what those are? Is it work overload, or is it overwhelming? It's very interesting to see the way how things would essentially transpire in certain places, because accountability comes in many different shapes, sizes, and forms. How many times have we seen in the sports world where you had, numerous times and on numerous occasions, professional athletes that are going to prison for who knows what, numerous things, or you had public figures all of a sudden having to be put in certain situations or circumstances that they never thought that they would ever think of having attempt in being accountable for. But the reality is it only comes down to one thing. Well, what is that one thing? What can that actually be? When you're accepting many different things on many different levels and having to do so much more and then some, how does this all transpire? How does this all work out? Well, it's very simple. This is the reason why they fall, because human nature cannot handle unchecked power. This is literally the evolutionary of the circle. So what ends up happening is the unchecked power leads to the abuse of power, and the unchecked abuse of power leads to loss of power. This is how empires and civilizations fall. They always implode. If you look at even that in the organization, or any other types of maybe families and things of that nature, people want to try and push and turn and manipulate and have things their way. Fine, at eventually at a certain points, the other family members will just say, you know what, I just had enough. I just had enough. So that's what happens there. But power is given to serve, and hopefully to the right person. When this is done correctly, it turns small organizations into mega corporations that continue to roll into making the greatest impacts in the communities they reach. So here's the beauty of it all, because it's not all about doom and gloom. It's also about optimistic and silver lining. If you give the right person who actually deserves the chance to actually achieve great things, and that's where they're authentically set, it doesn't matter how much money you give them or power. They will continue to deliver and follow through in a positive, productive, and effective way. Do that same amount of resourcing and do that to the person who is, let's just say, not sound-minded and greedy and selfish, etc., you will get exactly what they are, magnified. So not probably a wise decision to do something of that nature, because that's just bad things happen. Like, we've seen this in the public eye. It's just not a good thing to be a part of, unfortunately. But that's the way that things just happen to turn out. So never compromise yourself in an unchecked power position. What does this mean? See, here's the thing. Don't ever isolate yourself. Always be in a position to a certain degree or a certain realm of what? Hey, I need to be back to the grassroots and actually be boots on the ground and talk to people face to face. I need the high touch type of experience in order to make sure that I'm authentically and accountability wise being true to myself and to the person or to the relationship that I'm trying to grow in the partnerships there. The reason being is because of only one real magnificent thing, and that is those that have these checks and balances in place tend to actually be in some of the most unique, I don't want to say one thing or another to try and twist it, but here's the thing. They tend to find themselves in the most challenging or unique and potentially compromising situations and continue to rise above it all and take the high road and pull through. And this is very, very, very fine-lined and sensitive in the sense of, because if you want to actually develop something, what are you doing behind closed doors? And that's the very, very, very beginning on exactly, well, who really am I? When nobody's looking and there's no accountability, unchecked power, that's exactly what we're talking about right here, right now. Do you do the right thing when nobody's looking and there's no checks and balances on you? Or are you just going to continue to kind of shave here and there? You see, it's just never going to happen. In a bad person or in a good person, the outcome will always be what it is. Leaders can be easily separated from their people. Why? Well, you're thinking, oh, come on now. I'm like, no, I'm serious. Leaders can easily be separated from their people and sought in a manner that are actually quite different. See, one of the greatest quotes on this topic is by Hubert H. Humphrey, and said, "There is no party, no chief executive, no cabinet, no legislation in this or any other nation wise enough to govern without constant exposure to informed position." You're going to be able to set yourself in such a way where you're able to say, hey, I'm here with amongst these people. Outsiders will be able to look at you like as if everyone else is wearing black and you're wearing white, or they're wearing red and you're wearing blue. That's just the way how the human nature works. It's not going to change. It never has and never will. And that's probably one of the wildest things that I find myself in certain situations and circumstances. And they're like, okay, who's the leader? I'm like, oh, okay. So, you have to be able to be willing to step up and, perform and do whatever you need to do in order to make sure that things are able not only easily achieved, but that things are able to actually be having the ideal outcome. That's what it's all about. This just happens to be true for anyone in a leadership position. And that is basically well said right when it's said right there. So when we actually look at what's coming up next, in the sense of having the self-talk, or in this case, what you see is having a mentor in your life. They're very hard to come by. I'm always searching for them, and they always seem to kind of circle in and circle out. And it's because of when you're on a personal growth journey, depending on the style and the way how you're developing, you're not going to be able to relate. Like the mailman is not going to be able to relate to the lawyer, or the lawyer is not going to be able to relate to, the janitor. It's just not going to happen. I haven't heard of it or seen of it, and so I just leave it at that. But the one key factor of this is that you just got to develop integrity. And that's where really you're going to see what this whole series is actually about, is developing integrity. Next week, we're going to talk about integrity, and we're going to kind of go into a little bit more detail. And what does that mean? It's probably going to take 2 weeks. Reason being is because I don't want to just skim over. I don't want to be like, okay, you know what, here's some points for you. Hurrah, hurrah, here you go. No, because here's the thing. Some people overlook certain areas of life thinking that they're always going to get away with it. And they just keep on doing what they're doing. But the thing is they never realize that no matter what, everyone's journey or tree is different. Some trees are small, some trees are tall, some trees are short in the sense of branches, and others have long branches. And so what does this mean? Well, if you have a short, long branched tree, the fall is not going to be that hard. But if you're going to be on a large tree with small branches and you get cut down, that fall will be very, very painful. I know it hurts. I fell off an apple tree when I was like 6 or 7 years old. That was quite a wild experience because I thought I was like, I had the first time the breath was like knocked out of me and I thought I was going to die, but nope. I'm here telling you the story. So here you go. But what does it all come down to? It comes down to developing integrity. And so what does the illustration of the tree mean? If you catch yourself in the small tree with big branches, the consequences could be minimal. But if you catch yourself in the large tree with small branches, the consequences could be absolutely devastating. But always remember, whenever you, for some strange reason, have a weird feeling or intuitive urge, or a dolphin pecks you or gets your attention and then goes deep down into the water, there might be another dolphin in the water 20 meters or so deep caught in a net, and you might have to go in and save them, because there might be more than one life that you're saving if you're doing the right thing when nobody else is looking. Because you never know how many people you can really touch on the decisions that you make on a very surface level or in the deeps or the depths of the sea. So with that, it's very simply said. Next week, we'll be with the price tag of leadership part 9. We're back at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, work hard, stay humble,